This is John Cola with OKRaw.com. I have another exciting episode for you, and this one's going to answer a very important question that actually I get a lot. Hey John, how do you stay raw and eat more raw foods in a healthy manner? You know, that's one of the biggest challenges actually you guys out there in YouTube land may be having. You might eat, some cooked foods, maybe even some animal products, but you want to incorporate more raw foods and fresh fruits and vegetables in your diet, and you don't know how to do it. Well, this video is going to answer that question in detail in probably more ways than you want to know. So the first thing I want to say is the simplest way to include more raw foods in your diet is to have them available. So I'm actually standing in my garden right now, and right behind me are some perennial tree collards. I have some lemongrass growing here. Here's some stevia going to flower and seed. I have things like eggplants and basil and some tomatoes and peppers left even on the vine. So by far, that's the best way to eat more raw foods, is to have it available and grow your own garden. That's the number one way, because growing the garden, you're going to be able to harvest your own produce fresh. And when it's grown outside, like my tree collards here, and check it out, if you don't eat them, they go bad, and so these end up in the compost. So I'm literally losing money. So it's always best to grow your own and eat the most out of your garden as you possibly can. Now, many of you guys may have an apartment, may live in a place where it's not too easy to grow food. That being said, I want to let you guys know that I teach people how to grow food. I have over 700 videos at present time on growingyourgreens.com. Even in harsh climates like Las Vegas, you can still grow year-round. So you want to check my other, channel to see and learn how to grow food wherever you live. You can even grow sprouts and things inside all year, and you can even grow outside if it's snowing outside. And I have videos on that too. In any case, if you don't want to grow your food, which I highly encourage you guys, you can still eat more raw foods, and let's go inside and I'll show you how to do it. So if you don't have a garden and have easy access to fruits and vegetables outside, what you want to do on the inside of your house is literally this. You can see this is literally produce for about a week or two, and you want to have produce available for you to eat, because if you don't have good stuff to eat, guess what? You're going to go to the junk food, you're going to go to the processed foods, you're going to go to the foods that are not so healthy for you. So I like to have a mass abundance of fruits and vegetables available for me to eat so that I can be as healthy as possible. What I'm going to do next is actually we're going to go over some of the different fruits and vegetables that I have here, and maybe explain like a portion size to eat. A lot of you guys might be thinking, man, that looks like a lot of food. Well, trust me, I can literally take out a half box of oranges in like one sitting, and it's gone, and then I need to buy more food. So I have a lot of food, that's ready to eat now, and some will actually store longer than others. So we'll also discuss that as well. So we'll discuss some strategies on choosing food and picking some of the best foods to eat on a raw foods diet. On a raw foods diet, man cannot just live on dates alone. These are some fresh harvested dates that I harvested myself. Dates are a dried food, and what you're going to notice is that the majority of what I have for raw foods is not packaged and bottled stuff you could buy online, but fresh produce that you get to buy at your local grocery store, health food store, or better yet, farmer's market. And these are the water-rich foods that feed us not only the best nutrition and highest levels of nutrients, but also the water. We are 70 to 75% water, and if we're not eating things at least that water weight, it's dehydrating us. So yes, dates will dehydrate you. So in any case, what we're going to do next is actually go over some of the foods that I have today and share with you some of my insight on them. Now we're going to go over all the different varieties of foods that actually I have out displayed for you guys right now, and there's over 50 varieties. And that's something else I really want to, focus on and encourage you guys, is to eat a wide variety of different types of produce. So, you don't want to just eat bananas in the daytime and a couple heads of romaine at night. There's there's nutrition in there, but it's not as good as eating a full spectrum and a whole bunch of different varieties. Plus, with each variety and each different food, you get new taste sensations, so you're not getting bored of what you're eating. So I constantly strive to seek out new life and new civilizations. New fruits and exotic fruits and vegetables to eat so that I could get new taste sensations and, more importantly, more nutrients into my body. In any case, what we're going to talk about next is probably, in my opinion, the foundation of a healthy raw foods diet. It's the greens, silly. And we have like 7 pounds of baby spinach here displayed on the table, as well as some frisee. And we got arugula, baby romaine, and fancy romaine salad. This is all pre-bagged, pre-washed, so it's really easy and convenient. You can just rip open the bag, pour it in a bowl, and eat it as a salad once you make a salad dressing, or put it in the blender to make green smoothies or blended salads. Be sure to check my other videos. I have many videos on making salad dressings and green smoothies, as well as blended soups also. But in any case, you're going to notice I have a wide variety of leafy greens. I just don't have romaine. I have romaine plus, arugula and spinach. And earlier this week I had baby kales, and I had power greens mixed with, had Swiss chard in it. So yeah, you want to definitely focus on getting a wide variety of leafy greens and always mixing them up. I actually recommend you strive to eat 2 pounds of leafy greens a day. So you might be thinking, John, that's a lot of leafy greens. Well, you could get something like this, a little baby organic spinach, and this is sold at most like Costco or Sam's Club. They sell the organic ones. That's the lowest price to get those there for most people. And this is 1 pound. So I mean, this 1 pound, you could eat a 1 pound, in your salad for dinner time. You could also take 1 pound and put it into a green smoothie. Actually, that's what we did yesterday. We blended up some orange juice and 1 pound of spinach for green smoothie. You could also take 1 pound of greens and pound it through your juicer and drink some delicious vegetable juice. So that actually will move us into the next thing we're going to talk about. And the next thing we're going to talk about are these guys. These guys are actually called lemon cucumbers. So much like regular cucumbers, they taste fairly similar, but these don't have the bitter skin. And actually I grew these myself. And what I'm using these guys for are primarily for juicing. I eat some too and cut up in salads and whatnot. But these guys add a lot of water content to your juice and dilute some of the greens. So you can see here I got 2 big flats. And you might be thinking, man, John, that's a lot of produce. Well, I actually had to harvest all the lemon cucumbers before the frost hit outside, because it's always best to leave your food on the plant or vine until you're going to use it, unless something like frost is coming. If these guys were left outside when the frost hits, then these guys would literally turn into mush and be no good anymore. Now we're going to talk about some other things I harvested from my garden, and that's right over here. I harvested a whole bunch of peppers. So besides hot peppers, which I don't eat so often, I have a lot of sweet peppers and a lot of different varieties. Besides just the standard bell peppers, there's all different kinds of Italian heirloom peppers you can get, but unless you grow them yourself, you're not going to be able to, taste these guys or get the nutrients from them. Every pepper tastes just a little bit different, so it's really cool when I could grow a lot of these heirloom varieties. So I encourage you guys to actually grow your own peppers so you could have new taste sensations, because everyone tastes a little bit different. Plus, when you grow your own, you could focus on building the soil, because the food that you're eating comes from the soil. And if conventional agriculture puts only 3 minerals on the soil, it's not going to contain a full spectrum of nutrients that it should. I mean, I put 90 plus minerals into the soil that these peppers are grown on. So when I do that, these peppers not only taste better, but they're also actually more nutritious for me. So I like that a lot. In addition, besides the peppers, I also have a lot of tomatoes, some of which I grew myself, which is the last of them. And I also, buy tomatoes in mass here. I have 2 kinds here today. I have the organic Roma tomatoes, and I like buying organic whenever possible. That's something you should strive to do, because in general, organic agriculture, the products derived from them have more nutrition, but more importantly, don't contain the things like toxic chemical pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. So you have some organic Roma tomatoes. But if that's too expensive or you can't find them, what I also like to recommend to people are these guys. These are Eurofresh Farms Campari fresh tomatoes on the vine, and these are actually greenhouse grown, and it says certified pesticide free. So I like to get these guys when I can't get the organic ones, or when these are actually a much better price. And you might be thinking, John, that's a lot of tomatoes. I mean, there's like, each one of these is like a pound of tomatoes in here. But once again, I could literally take 1 whole carton of these guys and, blend it up into a salad dressing at night. So I'm eating a lot of produce on this diet. And that's the other thing you have to remember on a raw foods diet. A lot of the foods you're eating, it's all water content. So you can't have, there's not dehydrated things that are, take a little space. You have to eat a larger quantity of food, to actually feel satisfied and feel full. But at the same time, you're feeding the body all the nutrients it needs to be optimally healthy. Up to now, I showed you low caloric density foods, so such as the, leafy greens. They barely contain any calories, and some of the non-sweet fruits, while they are fruits because they contain seeds, they don't have a lot of calories in them. So my preference is to get the majority of my calories from the sweet fruits that have much more caloric density. So what we're going to go over next is actually the fruits. And I have a wide variety of fruits. And let's see, right here we got persimmons. So we have the standard Fuyu persimmons. Actually, here we have some special chocolate persimmons. Let me see if I can find a ripe one to show you guys. So here's a ripe one here. We'll show you the inside. Literally on the inside, that's like almost like a dark brown color. They're called chocolate persimmons. They're quite sweet and actually very delicious. Now I love to eat foods in season, and that's why I have the persimmons right now. Persimmons right now are in season, and whatever is in season are usually the lower prices in the store. Plus, you're only going to get them one time a year. Persimmons are like the fall/winter time, and pretty soon they're going to be gone. So I like to focus on local foods and in-season foods as much as possible, because some of the other foods that you'll see here are available pretty much year-round. In addition, I got another fruit here, and you might be thinking, John, what are those, lemons? Nope, these are actually called sweet limes. So I like the sweet limes a lot because, unlike a citrus fruit that has a lot of acid, if you get these guys ripe, they're actually relatively low acid. So to me, these are just like drinking like a nature's purified water. I'll juice these guys and it makes a pretty much water that has a slight, lime taste. But once again, these guys are ripe, so there's no acidity. The other thing to remember is that when you're buying green limes, those guys actually aren't ripe because they should turn yellow, and they're picking them too early to get that flavor that you're used to, that what you think a lime should taste like. In addition, we got some Meyer lemons. So the Meyer lemons are actually a lemon that's sweeter than the standard lemon. And once again, I want to encourage you guys to pick all your fruit as ripe as possible. These were actually picked at a local farmer's market, and they're a nice dark rich color. So when picking fruits in general, the darker the color, the riper it is. And also you want them a little bit soft, but not too soft because it could be going bad. In addition, I have one Valencia orange off a friend's tree, and this guy is actually super ripe. It actually is called a tree drop. And a lot of produce sold in the stores, in your health food store or grocery store, are picked, in my opinion, far too early. And before their peak of ripeness. And if they're not at the peak ripeness, they're not at the peak of sweetness, and actually not actually at the peak of the nutritional value. They're picked too early. What will happen is that they're going to be able to store and transport longer without going bad. And that's the goal of the people selling you the produce, because they don't want to lose their investment to make their profit. So you want to grow your own or support local farmers or find a friend with a tree. Another seasonal fruit that I have right now that actually I grew myself, these guys are actually called fajoas, or also known as pineapple guavas. These guys are absolutely delicious. Now I'll go ahead and show you guys one of these. You can't eat the skin on these guys, but it's a little bit bitter. Usually I'll just cut them open and then just eat the inside out. Nice guava-like taste. So good. But fajoas you'll rarely see in trade or for sale because they have a very short and limited shelf life. Yet another reason to grow your own. Another fruit we have today are papayas. So this is a Mexican papaya. I would caution you guys, actually a lot of papayas these days may be GMO or genetically modified. To my knowledge, the Mexican or Mardol papayas are these long ones that are big, not the small ones. In general are not GMO based on my research. And the papayas are available year-round. We are coming into the winter time here, so a lot of the fresh fruits are going out of season, but there's pretty much always a good source of papayas. So I do like to eat some papayas in the winter time when I can't get some other fruits. In addition, back here we got things like honeydew melons and cantaloupe melons. These are actually organically grown, and I'll stop right there, and I want to talk more about organics. I think most of what you're seeing here today is actually organically grown. I want to encourage you guys to eat as much organically grown food as possible. You want to minimize the amount of pesticide residues and, more importantly, increase your nutrition. There have been studies, and based on my research, food that's organically produced has sometimes up to twice or maybe 3 times as much more nutrition than the conventional. So even if you're paying twice the price, you may actually be getting twice the nutrition, and I definitely think that's a good deal. Aside from the melons we got, which are actually the honeydews actually store quite well. The cantaloupes will have to be used before them. They also have some pineapples. I like to actually use the pineapples to juice, and lately we've been actually juicing pineapples with some of the pomegranates to make a nice delicious juice. A lot of times if you buy pineapples, they have a proteolytic enzyme, which means it breaks down proteins, called bromelain that actually cause your tongue to start actually bleeding in some cases because it breaks down the proteins on your tongue. So you want to try to get your pineapples as ripe as possible. And in general, I've learned that the riper the pineapple, the more yellow or more color it has. And you know, if you're buying pineapples that are green, they're not as ripe and they're going to probably burn your tongue more. So when I juice them, actually that doesn't happen. It seems to break down those proteolytic enzymes so that it actually doesn't burn my tongue. What we're going to talk about next are more fruits. I love my fresh fruits, and once again, I get the majority of my calories from fresh fruits in my diet, and you know, I think that's definitely a good strategy to have. What you see here are a lot of bananas. Now, while I don't eat 30 bananas a day or necessarily recommend you do either, because if you're eating 30 bananas a day, you're actually, you know, filling up on banana calories when you could be enjoying calories from other fruits and vegetables that are going to give you a wide variety and wide spectrum of nutrients. That being said, during the winter time, once again, when you know there's not a lot of fruits in season, or I want to save money, I'll go for the bananas because per calorie and per dollar, they're definitely the cheapest calorie in organic raw food dollars for fruits anyways. So we buy a wide variety of bananas, and we have them in different stages of ripening. So when you go to the store, don't just buy all super ripe ones or super green ones. Try to get them in different stages. I mean, you can see we have some here that are still green. These are partly green with more yellow. These are mostly yellow, and these are actually almost ripe, and these are probably about the time we want to start using these guys since they're spotted up and looking pretty nice. So I mostly use these bananas in smoothies, green smoothies, and fruit smoothies because I don't necessarily enjoy eating imported bananas that are picked far too early and also actually gassed to ripen. I'd rather be, you know, somewhere in the tropics in Florida or Hawaii eating bananas right off the tree that have not been, you know, harvested too early because they're going to have their full flavor. Plus, the sad thing is, the bananas that you're buying in the store, it's only one variety. There's like hundreds or thousands of varieties of bananas, each with different flavors, much like, you know, we have many varieties of apples available at your local grocer. Besides bananas, of course, we got some mangoes. Mangoes are coming into season now. I love mangoes. It's one of my favorite fruits. Lately, we've been actually using the mangoes with some the peppers to blend up into the blender to make a nice, delicious salad dressing. Also use those in fruit smoothies and just make a mono meal out of them. So what is a mono meal? A mono meal is when you eat one food at one time until you're totally satisfied and full, and you're not making a fruit salad with all different kinds of fruits. In general, I like to eat my fruits in a mono fashion, so I'll eat, you know, a meal of bananas, or I'll eat a meal of oranges, or I'll eat a meal of persimmons. And that, I feel, is the best way to get the best digestion and enjoy your food the most. So aside from the mangoes here, we got some oranges, and these oranges are actually called navel oranges because you can see the little navel right there. Now these oranges are not necessarily the best for juicing. The Valencia oranges are better for juicing. These guys are good for eating out of hand, or what we've been doing with these is actually just cutting off the orange coloring and actually then juicing them. So then they're actually a nice, rich, delicious, complete orange juice. You know, a lot of the orange juices you buy in the store, they literally just press the liquid out of the orange, but they're not juicing the white, fibrous pith. And that's where most of the nutrition is contained. So that's what we've been doing with these oranges here. Besides the oranges, another fall/winter food are these guys, pomegranates. Pomegranates are very rich in antioxidants and phytochemicals. So sometimes we'll actually juice the pomegranates with the orange and maybe even add the pineapple for a nice, delicious, sweet, nutrient-dense, pomegranate-rich drink. In addition, one of the foods I like a lot, and we only have a few left here, I got these guys. These are actually called jujubes, or actually called Chinese dates. And these are actually technically a dried fruit. You can't actually get these when they're fresh, and they taste more like an apple. When they're dried, they kind of taste kind of like bread because they have a nice doughy consistency to me. These guys are actually getting a little bit more dried than optimal. But this guy's actually nice and spongy. Man, these guys are so delicious. And these are actually a Chinese food, and these are known as a longevity food. And in Chinese herbalism, they use these for many different ailments. Now we're nearing the end of the fruits, and I'm getting a bit sad because I love my fruits. But what we have here are some organic pears. I like to eat organic pears sometimes as mono meals, or sometimes I'll blend them or even juice them up. And then also, of course, we have your standard apples. We got some Granny Smiths and some Fuji apples here. You know, I want to talk about apples for a second. Apples are available year-round, and to me, I like to eat apples when they're in season. So in the fall and winter are when they have just been harvested and they're at their peak. If you're buying apples in the summertime, then what you're probably eating are apples from last season or imported apples. So I always encourage you guys to eat, food seasonally. So apples are definitely better in the fall and winter, and also actually other winter fruits. Actually, citrus are in the season in the winter time as well. So besides these guys, which are in general used for juicing and a few recipes, we got some of these guys in the back here. And this is actually a butternut squash. And you might be thinking, John, how can you eat butternut squash raw? They're actually quite hard, but also very delicious. So what we did the other night is we peeled it and we actually put it through what's called a spiralizer. And the spiralizer actually makes long spaghetti-like strands to make like a spaghetti pasta. But that's raw because you don't need to cook it. So we literally just cut this up into little spaghetti-like strands and made a sauce, put it over it, and ate it right up. Another thing you can do with these guys is actually make a soup out of it or even juice it. So actually what we have planned for these guys, actually we're going to make some delicious butternut squash juice. Now with these squashes, which is known as a winter squash, they store fairly well. So these will easily store for a month or maybe even two, without going bad outside of the fridge. That's another reason why I like them. Some of the other foods that we got that store really well are coming up next, so let's talk about those. So the next foods we're going to talk about also store really well. They're known as nuts. And while the coconut is not a true nut, it's classified as a nut. And I like the coconuts, and you can see we have 3 different varieties here today. We have the young Thai coconuts, and based on my research, the young Thai coconuts are actually dipped in sulfides and fungicide, so it's not optimal. That's why I leave the plastic wrapping on them. The question is, does that dip that they're dipped in actually get through and penetrate into the water and the meat, which is the part you eat? And I'm not entirely sure that it does. I'm highly confident that it doesn't, but in some cases it may. So whenever possible, I don't get the Thai coconuts, but I'll get these kind that I got next. And what we got here are the white coconuts, and these are from Mexico. So the Thai coconuts are the youngest, and then these are like, maybe like adolescent coconuts. When picking a white coconut, you want to shake it, and you want to hear not anything shake around. You want it to be full of water because, in my opinion, the most valuable aspect of the coconut is the water itself. It's nature's purified water. So instead of taking bottled water to a sporting event or out running, just take a coconut, pop a straw in there, and drink the water out. You'll have an electrolyte-rich drink that'll replenish you from all your sporting activities. Now, besides the white coconut, which are rare and you may not be able to find those so much, we got these guys. We got the standard brown coconut. Now, I definitely don't like the brown coconuts too much because a lot of stores, like a grocery store, sell the brown coconuts, but they don't turn them over a lot. So what does that mean, turn them over a lot? That means they don't sell them a lot so that they're sitting there a lot. And when they're sitting there a lot, they're going bad. And, you can't really tell from looking at it on the outside if they're bad or not. One of the ways you can is you want to shake it. You want to hear a lot of water sloshing around. You also want it very heavy for its weight. So if you have a stack of 5 coconuts in front of you, pick them all up, and you generally want to get the heaviest one. You also want to look around the eyes and make sure there's no, like signs of mold or anything like that. But in general, from the comments I've received, most people will buy these brown coconuts and they're most oftentimes be bad. Another way you can prevent this is go to a place that turns them over a lot, such as a Mexican or Asian market, which, those people tend to buy the coconuts more than the standard American. So besides the regular standard sized coconuts, and these guys are actually grown on the coconut palm, which is actually not a tree, I have another kind of coconut, actually called caquito nut. So these guys are called actually baby coconuts or mini coconuts. That's because they're nice and small. Let's go ahead and try to open one of these guys up for you guys to show you guys actually how much it resembles a coconut. It's insane. We're going to take a standard nut cracker here and see if we could crack this open. Now, these are actually very hard nuts. All right, there we go. We cracked it open. And check it out inside here. What you're going to find is the hard shell, like the coconut shell. And then you're going to find a little coconut. And if we break this guy in half here, check it out. That looks like a little coconut on the inside. Just like their little coconut meat. Tastes so delicious. Now those guys are actually really rare. I harvested these guys myself, so they're quite good. You can find these guys online, but they're like just a few ounces for a lot of money. But definitely recommend you try them if you never have. They're quite unique, and I think they're nice and good. we just went over all the different vegetables and all the different fruits that I have available to eat at any time. Once again, making foods available so that you're not going hungry and you're going to stick on a raw foods diet, because when you got all this food, I'm constantly actually going through each different, bin to see which ones are ripe, which ones are going to go bad first, and those are the ones that I'm going to actually eat next. So that's a whole nother topic that I'm not going to discuss in this video. But up until now, you saw the fruits and the vegetables, and in my opinion, and for me personally, I eat those in unlimited quantities as much as I'd like. On the coconut, I drink as much coconut water as I like. Now on the coconut meat and these coquito nuts, those are actually nice, rich, fatty food. In my opinion, many raw foods diets in this day and age focus far too much on getting too many calories from fat, and that could be a big issue. So what I'm going to talk about next is actually nuts in the raw foods diet, and the nuts that I have actually that were pretty much freshly harvested and that I could eat at any time, but on the same token, I limit myself to 1 handful or 2 handfuls at the absolute most of nuts and seeds, or the coconut meat a day, because we don't want to eat too much fat in our diet. But that being said, in my opinion, there are some good nutrients in some of these different fatty foods, so you don't want to exclude them from your diet, but you don't want to eat too much of them either. I know a lot of people that when they're getting into raw foods, as a nice raw snack, they'll grab a handful of nuts out of the fridge. Actually, my dad does that, and he's definitely put on some extra weight because of that. Instead of grabbing a handful of nuts, hey, grab a banana, grab an orange, grab an apple, grab a pineapple guava, grab a persimmon to eat instead. Also, you can keep some fruits with you at work. Have a nice bowl at work on your, desk to grab at any time and eat some fresh fruits instead of having the nuts and seeds and dried fruits in your purse or in your glove box of your car. Just keep some fresh fruits available at all times. Some of the fruits actually store quite well. The oranges, for example, they store quite well as long as they're hard and firm. They'll store without refrigeration. The honeydew melons will store without refrigeration, provided it's not getting too hot in your car, at least for several days. So just put one in there, and when it's ripe, eat it. And you want to eat more fruits and vegetables is what the goal on the raw foods diet is, in my opinion. So anyways, let's talk about nuts, baby. Won't talk too much about nuts, but I do like nuts. Besides my own nuts, I like these nuts that I have here. We have some walnuts that I harvested fresh. So these are the standard walnuts that you know and may love. They actually are a nut that's higher in omega-3 fatty acids than other nuts. Back here I have a special walnut. It might look like a standard walnut to you, but we'll go ahead and crack this in half for you guys. And once we do, you're going to check it out, man. These guys are actually red walnuts. So that's totally a new color. You've probably never seen these guys before. These are probably have some different antioxidants and phytochemicals than the standard, brown or tan walnuts. And they taste good too. Now, aside from the walnuts, I like to get other nuts that are in season. And these nuts right now are in season. These are actually called pine nuts or pignolian nuts. These are actually Nevada grown. A lot of the pine nuts you get are actually out of the shell, imported from China. And those guys, in my opinion, are most of the time rancid, and you'll pay a lot of money for them. You can also get imported pine nuts from Italy, which are actually much higher quality, and I would recommend those instead of the ones from China. But overall, I recommend you guys eat local, and these guys are from Nevada, and these guys are actually quite delicious. These are in the shell. So in my opinion, it's the best way to purchase your nuts is in shell. Number one, in most cases, they're going to be less expensive. Number two, the shell is what protects them. It's like, a wrapper on a candy bar. It's going to keep the nut inside fresh and from going rancid. I mean, after all, the nut is literally a seed for the tree to grow a whole new tree. So we could literally plant this in-shell pine nut and grow a whole new pine tree. So the shell keeps the nut viable longer. Also, it slows you down from eating them, which is a very important point. I have another video on the #1 food raw foodists overeat and how nature prevents that. So if you haven't seen that video, I'd encourage you guys to watch it. But if you have to shell your pine nuts to eat, it takes a long time. I like to squeeze them between my fingers, and it'll pop it, and then I'll just roll it around here a little bit. I separate the pine nut there from the shell. Another thing about in-shell nuts, because the nut is the protective casing, this actually pine nut is not like the ones you're going to buy at your bulk bin at your local health food store. This is actually soft, and because it is fresh, it actually has a much higher water content. So it's not as dehydrating. Plus, they taste amazing. Wow. So besides the pine nuts here, I also have other kinds of nuts. So I have some almonds in the shell here that I harvested from my brother's tree. And in addition, I saved my apricot pits because inside the apricot pit is a seed. So let's go ahead and grab that handy dandy nutcracker here and show you guys what's inside the apricot pit. So inside the apricot pit is a seed, and there's what's left over of the seed when I demolished it by breaking it open. And that looks like a little almond. Wow. Has a nice like almond flavor, like, you know, the essential oil of almond or whatever, or almond extract. It's actually kind of bitter. So I'll eat these in like small amounts, but this guy actually have B17 or laetrile, which some people say can, you know, actually fight cancer and things like that. So I like to eat, once again, a wide variety of foods. I'm not just eating one type of nut. I have many different kinds, and once again, a handful or two a day. Another fat that I like to include in my diet besides nuts and coconuts are avocados. We love avocados. Avocados are one of my favorite fats because they're a water-rich fat. So they're not quite as concentrated as the nuts and seeds, but nonetheless, I don't like to eat too many avocados in a day, maybe one or maybe two if I'm feeling rambunctious. Another thing that many people that are new into raw foods do will eat like 6 avocados in one sitting, and we've all done that. I've done it, you've probably done it, but you want to try to, you know, limit your avocado intake and lower the fat calories, you know. Fat calories from avocados definitely better than fat calories or, you know, calories coming from McDonald's or some processed and junk foods, but it's not as healthy as calories coming from some leafy green vegetables or some fresh sweet fruits, in my opinion. Another good source of calories on a raw foods diet are starchy vegetables. So I don't eat a lot of, you know, starchy root vegetables or tubers. I don't eat potatoes pretty much for the most part. It's rare that you'll ever see me eat a potato, but this is my favorite tuber that I do like to eat that is actually fairly calorically dense compared to some of the other things I'm eating. And actually this is called a sunchoke or Jerusalem artichoke. Actually, I grew these guys myself and they are actually quite delicious. These guys are a tuber that actually you do not need to cook in order to eat them. I like to actually slice these up thin like little chips and dip them in some guacamole made with my avocados. So I always encourage you guys to, you know, experience and try new and different foods. The sunchokes kind of taste a little bit like a jicama, but not. There's also other tubers that you can eat raw, such as yacon, Chinese artichoke, and even water chestnuts. So yes, I like eating some of my Jerusalem artichokes every once in a while. And these guys, pretty much, if you're going to grow one tuber, this is the one to grow. It pretty much will grow as a weed. And, you know, one plant could yield easily 10 pounds of food for you guys to eat if you do it right. And these actually store all winter. Another thing I'm growing in my garden are pumpkins. So these are some, this is a pumpkin. Actually, this is called the Kakai pumpkin. And I'm not growing this necessarily for the pumpkin flesh, because I don't eat a lot of pumpkin flesh. The pumpkin flesh on this is not necessarily too sweet on here, but I do juice it, and it actually tastes good in a juice. But what I grow these guys for are inside the pumpkin seeds. So you guys might know that most pumpkin seeds are actually white. They have a hull on them, and you gotta like take off the hull before you eat them, or else it's really fibrous and not good. But you can buy the Mexican green pepita seeds or pumpkin seeds that sell at the health food store. And those are green, and those are hull-less seeds, and actually that's what this pumpkin produces. So I have a smaller one here I'm going to show you guys. This is just a little pumpkin here. We just go ahead and cut that in half, and inside here you'll see, you know, there's these little green seeds, and these are fresh pepita seeds. How many of you guys have ever tasted fresh pepita seeds? You often get the dried ones, but let me tell you, when they're water-rich and fresh, they taste like nothing else. They're so amazing. You could just use these in recipes, put them over salads, blend them up into a dressing. They're so delicious. What I normally do is I take these out, and if I don't use them fresh, I'll actually put them in the dehydrator. And those are the best tasting pumpkin seeds I've ever tasted, grown in nutrient-dense soil. Plus, they're not heated at hot temperatures. And that's another thing I want to talk about is, you know, if you're not getting your nuts in shell, if they're just in the bulk bins, already pre-shelled, you know, they may and probably are not raw in most cases. I know for sure they are now pasteurizing California almonds either by heat or steam or using actually chemicals. And the raw cashews in the bulk bins, they're not raw because they have been heated hotter to than what 118 degrees, which is what a raw foodist would like. They do have quote unquote really raw cashews, but in my opinion, the cashews are still not that good, and instead I prefer to get actually dehydrated macadamia nuts from Hawaii, and they actually are quite delicious. So that brings me to the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video learning how to eat more raw foods and stay on the raw foods diet the easiest way. And once again, you want to make the produce available to you. I mean, literally my house looks like the produce department, and that's what your house should look like too. And if it doesn't, you may not be setting yourself up to succeed the best way possible on a healthy living and raw foods diet. So once again, my name is John Kohler with OKRaw.com, and I want to encourage you always to eat your fruits and vegetables. They're the best.